I have this manuscript, I want to get this out, but I want to include illustrations. Like, is that something the publisher handles? Is that something you have to handle? You'd be like, oh, you like percentage of your royalties or whatever have to go to that. Like, how does that process work? How would you say that process is different if you're working with an illustrator?
I love it. I mean, I asked my publisher, "You sure you want this collection to be illustrated?" That's more typical young adult. Like, we're not writing a young adult book, are we? Right? And he was like, "That's fine. Like, I think people will find that more compelling." And I thought, "Oh my god, that's brilliant. That's just brilliant," you know. And it turned out to be, I think, central to the book, really attracting a lot of attention because the illustrations speak for the book itself without reading the poems.
Mm-hmm.
The whole collection is illustrated, and the illustrator is a very important part of this book. Her name is Perla Temolzi. She's a visual artist from Mexico City, and she's like central to how the making of the book, because of course I came up with the poems, but once we had like the full length of the book, then she was commissioned to illustrate it. So the book wouldn't have had that completeness without the illustration.
If someone has a poetry collection, they're like, okay, I have this manuscript, I want to get this out, but I want to include illustrations. Like, is that something the publisher handles? Is that something you have to handle? You'd be like, oh, you like percentage of your royalties or whatever have to go to that. Like, how does that process work in terms of like the
Well,
financing?
yeah, well, it was the first time I had been in a process where there were all these moving parts, because I was in charge with, communicating the content to the
Yeah.
illustrator, because she didn't speak English. So I had to like tell her what was the concept behind the book and titles of the poems. And so it was really like a very beautiful collaboration, because I learned, how collective the like bookmaking process was, because this is like a very small independent publishing house in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically was me, the publisher, the illustrator, and the graphic designer, and also the book cover designer. So it was beautiful to see, to really be part of that production process, because I really got to develop a friendship with all of the creators of the book. Yes, it was beautiful.